What if one day you realize that your whole life is someone else's game, and your feelings are just a bargaining chip? Are you ready to risk everything for true love and freedom? Stay with us. Coming up is a story that will turn your understanding of passion, betrayal, and the power of your own choices upside down. The power of feelings. The evening light gently wrapped the city, refracting through the glass of skyscrapers and creating illusions that Emily loved so much. She sat on the balcony of her luxurious apartment, hugging her knees, gazing at a world that felt both familiar and foreign. For 10 years she had been the perfect wife, a queen in a world ruled by money and power. Her husband, Richard, was a powerful businessman, and every step Emily took was carefully planned, every word weighed. She was his support, his secret weapon, but deep down, she always dreamed of a prince on a white horse who would come and change her life. But instead it was David who entered her world. David was the one they underestimated. He wasn't just a young, charismatic man working at Richard's company. He was a predator in a world full of sheep. His confidence and ambition drew people in like a magnet, and Emily sensed there was something more in his eyes than just professional interest. He was someone who refused to be a pawn, who would never submit to another's will. David wanted more than power, he wanted her. Emily couldn't take her eyes off him. He was like a fresh breeze in her otherwise predictable life. Yet she knew this was a dangerous game. Richard seemed unbothered by the intrigue. He showed no jealousy. On the contrary, he seemed to enjoy watching David win her attention. There was a glint of excitement in his eyes, as if he himself was a participant in this game, where love became a weapon, trust a weakness, and she herself, a bargaining chip. Every evening when Richard returned home, he pretended not to notice David flirting with Emily. He would hug her, kiss her forehead, and then with a gentle smile, let her go to evening meetings with colleagues. Emily felt as if she were standing on the edge of a cliff. On one side, her love for her husband. On the other, the alluring call of David, promising a life full of passion and adventure. One evening, as the city was wrapped in silence, David invited her for a walk. They wandered through the evening streets, and Emily, forgetting her fears, surrendered to the moment. He spoke of life, of dreams, of the importance of following one's desires. His voice was like music, and Emily, forgetting her obligations, felt her heart beating in time with his words. "You know," David said, stopping by a shop window reflecting their faces, "sometimes you have to take a risk to find out what you really want." Her heart raced. She looked at him, reading the challenge in his eyes. That look was full of passion and confidence, and Emily felt her inner world begin to crumble. She was married, but at that moment she couldn't think of Richard. David was like fire, igniting long-forgotten feelings within her. "I can't," she whispered, though she didn't believe her own words. "Why not?" His voice was soft but insistent. "You deserve more than just being your husband's shadow." Those words echoed in her soul, like the remnants of long-forgotten dreams. She remembered how, as a child, she dreamed of a prince who would take her away to a land of wonders. But now, standing at a crossroads, she didn't know which path to choose. That night, when David walked her to her door, he stopped and looked into her eyes. His breath was warm, and Emily felt a wave of desire wash over her. He leaned closer, and in that moment, she realized that something more than a game had arisen between them. "I can make you happy," he said, and in his voice was the sincerity she had so desperately missed. Emily froze, her heart pounding as if it wanted to break free from her chest. She knew it was dangerous, but it was so tempting. She stepped back, trying to control her emotions. "I'm married, David," she said, but her voice was uncertain. "Yes, but that doesn't mean you can't be happy," he replied, and there was a spark in his eyes that promised her freedom. With each passing day, their meetings became more frequent and intense. Emily realized she was falling into a trap, but she couldn't stop. David became not just a confidant, but the source of inspiration she had longed for. He showed her a world without rules, where feelings were real, not subject to the harsh laws of business. Richard seemed to notice the change in her. He became more attentive, but not in the way she expected. He didn't ask questions, didn't voice suspicions, but simply continued his own game. Emily felt the chasm between them growing, and every day she became more entangled in her feelings. One day, when Richard invited her to a high society gala, she knew it would be a test. The evening was full of glamour, but for Emily it was a true trial of strength. She felt David watching her from afar, his gaze full of passion and challenge. Richard, meanwhile, was in his element, moving confidently through the room like a master who controlled every detail. When they danced, Emily felt her heart beating in time with the music, but her thoughts kept circling around David. She couldn't shake the feeling that her life had become unbearably dull, and that beyond this ballroom, another world awaited her, one full of passion and freedom. "You look stunning," Richard whispered, his voice full of admiration. "I'm proud of you." But at that moment Emily couldn't answer him. She felt David like a shadow standing nearby, his presence a spark that could ignite a fire in her soul. After the gala back home she couldn't sleep. Thoughts of David wouldn't leave her. She knew her life was on the edge. Every day she realized more and more that love was not just a feeling, but a game where the rules could change at any moment. Richard, it seemed, was not against this game. On the contrary, he used it as a strategy to achieve his own goals. The next day, David invited her for another walk. They met in the park and Emily, unable to hold back, rushed into his arms. He held her tightly, and in that moment, she knew she couldn't live a lie any longer. She wanted to be with him, to feel her heart filled with real emotions. "I can't do this anymore," she said, looking into his eyes. "I want to be with you." David smiled, understanding in his eyes. He knew the decision wouldn't be easy, but he was ready to fight for her. "We'll find a way," he said, his voice full of confidence. "I'm not giving up." But as they exchanged glances, Emily felt Richard's shadow looming over them. He appeared like a ghost, his presence filling the air with tension. Richard looked at them with a smirk, and in his eyes it was clear he wasn't against this game. "What's going on here?" he asked, his voice cold and confident. Emily froze, her heart pounding. She knew this moment would be decisive. David and Richard stared at each other, the air thick with tension, promising more than just a clash between two men. "I love her," David said, his voice a challenge, "and I'm not giving up." Richard laughed, bitterness in his tone. He stepped closer, and Emily felt her world begin to crumble. She was a pawn in their struggle for power, and in that moment, she realized that love could be both salvation and destruction. "You don't understand, David," Richard said, his voice icy. "I'm not about to lose what belongs to me." Emily looked at them, her heart torn apart. She knew this was not just a game but a real war with stakes too high. In 10 years of marriage to Richard, she had mastered the art of keeping calm, even when a storm raged inside. But lately her life felt like a chess game, each piece playing its role. She was at the center of this battle, and each man was willing to do anything for victory. But was Emily really the prize for which this chess game began? Richard, her husband, was a man who always knew what he wanted. His ambitions had no limits, and he wasn't shy about using any means to achieve his goals. But now, with David in their lives, Emily felt her world turn upside down. David, mysterious and charismatic, became not just a rival, but a temptation she couldn't resist. In this battle, Richard wasn't going to back down. He seemed to be everywhere. David, with whom she shared evening walks, became her secret salvation. In his eyes she saw not just games. They were full of emotions that awakened long-forgotten feelings. His confidence and energy shone so brightly that even in the gray routine of office life, Emily felt alive. Every time he embraced her, the sense of the world mixed with his sea and earth, a reminder of what she was missing. When David spoke of his dreams, his voice sounded like the melody of her heart. He dreamed of a new company, of beating the competition, of a freedom he didn't allow himself. But in truth, he dreamed of her, a woman who could stand beside him at the top. This realization gave Emily a sense of extraordinary strength, but also robbed her of peace. One evening, as the sunset painted the sky in gold and purple, David invited Emily to meet. She hesitated but finally agreed. Fear and excitement battled within her, but curiosity won. They met in a cozy restaurant, where candles flickered, creating a romantic atmosphere. David looked impeccable. In a dark suit with a confident smile, he seemed the embodiment of a dream. Emily, on the other hand, felt vulnerable, as if not only his eyes but also invisible forces were seeing through her inner fears. "You know, Emily," David began, his voice soft but carrying a hidden strength, "sometimes to understand what truly matters, you have to lose everything." A chill ran down Emily's spine. His words were full of meaning, but she couldn't quite grasp what he was getting at. "Aren't you afraid of losing?" she asked, trying to keep her composure. "I'm not afraid of anything except boredom," David replied with a slight smirk. "Richard is boredom. He doesn't understand that real life is a game." Emily froze. David spoke of her husband with disdain, and it stung her. But there was truth in his words. Richard had indeed become too predictable. David continued, "You're not a pawn, Emily. You're a queen. And a queen must know when to make her move." His eyes sparkled, and in that moment, Emily realized that David was not just a predator. He was a soul catcher, someone who knew how to play on her fears and desires. But what did he really want from her? The next day, when Emily returned home, Richard was waiting for her with a cold, penetrating gaze. "Where have you been?" he asked, his voice even but with an undercurrent of threat. "With a friend," she lied, trying not to betray her emotions. Richard didn't believe her, but he didn't press. He knew Emily hadn't become his wife by accident. She was his support, his crown, and he wasn't about to lose her. With each passing day, the tension grew. David continued to appear in their lives like a shadow, and Emily couldn't understand what he was planning. She felt a battle brewing between the two men, and she was at the center of it. One day, as she sat in her office, lost in thought, David appeared unexpectedly. "You can't stay on the sidelines," he said, his voice insistent. "Richard is using you as a bargaining chip in his game." Emily froze. "What do you mean?" "He's willing to sacrifice you for his power," David said, stepping closer. "You have to understand that you deserve more." His words were like sharp needles piercing her soul. But at the same time, she felt a fire begin to burn inside her. I can't just leave, she said, though deep down she knew it wasn't entirely true. You can, David replied, his eyes shining with determination. You have to be strong. Emily felt her heart beat faster. She knew David was dangerous, but at the same time he was the one who awakened a strength in her she never knew she had. With each day she sank deeper into this game, and though she tried to keep her distance, her feelings for David grew more complicated. Richard, as always, remained in the shadows, but his presence was felt. He wasn't going to give up. One evening when Emily returned home, she found that Richard had prepared a surprise, a lavish candlelit dinner. He smiled, but there was a shadow of discontent in his eyes. I want you to know how much I value you, he said, his voice full of sincerity, but also carrying a hint of threat. You're my queen, and I won't let anyone take you away. Emily felt a surge of resentment inside. She wasn't his property. She was a person and she had her own desires. Richard, she began, but he interrupted her. No, listen to me. I know what's going on. I know David is trying to manipulate you. He's not who he pretends to be. Emily froze. How could he know? You need to be careful, Richard continued, his voice more insistent. He wants to use you. Emily felt her world turn upside down again. She couldn't believe Richard knew about David. But what if he was right? What if David really was a predator disguised as a sheep? Emily's thoughts became tangled. Who was who? She realized she didn't really know the people closest to her. The only thing she could trust were the feelings she experienced when she was with David. Meanwhile, Richard watched Emily's every move. The great businessman, always at the center of attention, was now becoming a prisoner of his own marriage. His desire to control Emily grew stronger each day, but Emily herself was drifting further and further away. Every time he brought up David, his voice grew tense, flashes of jealousy sparking in his eyes. He couldn't allow someone who came out of nowhere to interfere in his life. You know, David is taking risks, he said one day, pointing to photos filled with meetings and business results. He doesn't understand what he's playing with. If he can't fix things, he'll fall from grace. Don't you think he's a bit too cocky? Emily felt her husband's words cut through her defenses like a sharp blade. She clenched her fists, trying to gather her thoughts. Now Richard's words sounded to her like a love song that once enchanted her, but had now turned into a poisonous symphony. While David sought ways to strengthen his position in business, his feelings for Emily became more and more obvious. Sometimes they laughed, sometimes they sat in silence, but every moment was filled with emotions that only grew stronger. Every time his hand touched hers, she forgot who she was for a moment. I want you to be happy, he said with a sincerity that made her heart tremble. Don't let anyone tie down your dreams. You deserve so much more. Every word was like a spark, igniting the fire of her inner conflict. Emily knew courage alone would not be enough. Whatever line she crossed, her life would never be the same. This couldn't go on any longer. Emily took a deep breath, gathering all her emotions into one. She understood that the conversation with Richard ahead would not only change her life, but also reveal the truth about her feelings. She stood on the edge of the abyss, ready to take a step into the unknown. That evening, Richard came home later than usual, his face tense. He walked silently into his office, scattering documents across the desk. Emily stood still, her heart pounding, as if anticipating a storm. Emily, he said, looking up. She met his gaze and a heavy silence hung between them. Finally, gathering her thoughts, she spoke. Richard, this isn't just about business. We need to talk about us. His expression changed, tension rising from beneath his calm. He stood up, confidently stepping closer. About what exactly? His voice was wary. About us, about what's happening between us and David. I can't pretend anymore, she said, trying to keep her voice steady, though inside she was in turmoil. I can't be your shadow any longer. Richard froze, his face darkening. His anger mixed with confusion. David is just a passing fancy. Their conversation dragged on, pain and resentment making the moment more and more tense. Emily finally realized that their relationship was just a mask, hiding emptiness. She couldn't live in a world where her feelings were used as currency. I'm tired of waiting for something that will never happen, she said firmly. I can't do this anymore, Richard. We've lost each other. Richard left the room in silence. Emily was left alone. Time passed and days turned into weeks. It was then, strangely, that memories of David began to surface. His confident eyes, his witty laughter, the warmth of his hands. Memories of their walks through the evening city, of tender glances and words that soothed her soul. For a long time, she felt the warmth from him, like a fiery heart, still endlessly bright, but out of reach. But David seemed to have vanished. He didn't answer her messages, didn't show up at the office. To keep those magical moments alive, she created the illusion that he was somewhere nearby, and it gave her strength to survive the break with Richard. But living without him, Emily felt her heart reaching desperately for the light every night. It was as if she had developed a dependency. She needed to see him. In the end, she made up her mind. After much thought, she sent David a short message. I miss you. I need your support. She waited, but there was no reply. Why had he disappeared? What did it mean for her? These questions tormented her mind. A few more weeks passed. The trees outside donned golden attire, and the cold wind carried the scent of the holidays, but she felt no joy. Emily hid away in her cozy home. A glass of red wine, a symbol of her new independence. She tried to distract herself, but memories of David kept swirling in her mind. One day, while scrolling through old messages, Emily noticed a phone number hidden in one of them that she hadn't seen before. Excited, she called him. Her heart pounded. Each ring was like a curse or a hope. Silence. She was about to give up when she heard his voice. Emily, he said quietly, and in that moment, his voice reminded her of the warmth she so desperately craved. I can't wait any longer, David, she confessed, feeling the weight in her heart. Emily, there are times when each of us has to walk our own path, David began, his words washing over her soul like waves. I know it's hard, but sometimes life demands courage from us. I'll always be there for you, even if distance separates us. Emily closed her eyes, allowing herself to sink into memories. How much they had been through together. Every laugh, every silence, every glance. All of it was part of their incredible journey. But now it seemed the time had come to say goodbye. I'll always be in your heart, he continued, his voice filled with a tenderness that could melt even the coldest barriers. You taught me what true love is. You gave me feelings I'll never forget. David's words wrapped around her like a warm blanket on a cold night. She felt a spark of gratitude for all the moments they had shared. This was more than just love. It was understanding, trust, sincerity. And even if their paths were diverging, she knew that this light would remain with her forever. Thank you, David, she said, her voice calm without tears or regret. only peaceful acceptance. You were an important part of my life. I'll always remember us." There was silence on the other end, and Emily knew he understood. They both knew that this connection, though changed, would never disappear. It would live on in their hearts, like a bright trail left by stars in the night sky. "Take care of yourself," David said, hope in his voice. "I believe there's so much beauty ahead for you." Emily smiled, though he couldn't see her. In that moment, she realized that love isn't always about being together. Sometimes it means letting go so the other person can grow. "You too," she replied, and a sense of confidence blossomed in her soul. "We'll find our own paths, but I'll always be grateful that you were in my life." Emily set her phone down and looked out the window, where the fog was slowly lifting, revealing the bright city lights. She knew a new chapter awaited her, full of discoveries and hope. Life would never be the same. In this knowledge there was no fear or regret, only a bright memory of what had been, and the sense of something new already so close. This story shows just how complex and multifaceted love can be, especially when it intertwines with the struggle for power and our own dreams. Under the power of feelings, we are forced to make difficult choices and follow our own path, even if it means leaving behind what is familiar and safe. It's important to remember that true love is not only about passion and intense emotions, but also about cherishing the moments that change us and help us understand who we are and what truly matters to us. If you enjoyed this story, please like, share your thoughts in the comments, and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss new videos with captivating stories. Thank you for your attention.